So just to start off with, well, actually, I guess I'll just toss you guys the mic. We do have some new guys up here. So just to start off with, I'd like to just have them just spend a couple of minutes about talking about their specific organization and how you get either a spirit of innovation and that type of thing, or hacker breakers and makers. Do you want to start?
So who we are?
Yeah, who you are.
I'm Jason from a company called Visionaries that was bought by Intel. Visionaries does API management software. So if you are running a hackathon or going to a hackathon, you're probably using APIs. I've had the experience, though, of running the hackathon program for Census for many years and running public hackathons. So I'm coming at this from very much what it is to run a public hackathon and why that's relevant to businesses.
Hello, I'm Stephen Cooper from PayPal and Braintree. My team, Braintree Devs, are basically focused around hanging out, geeking out, as I call it, with developers around the world. So we go out and work out ways that we can improve our APIs. PayPal has quite a lot of APIs. Braintree has a really awesome payment integration called V0. Yeah, we hang out with developers. We go to conferences. We find out ways that we can make our APIs, SDKs better. All our SDKs are open source, have been since 2009, so freely available on GitHub. People can report bugs, or developers can report bugs. We also run a international hackathon series called Battle Hack, which we had in Melbourne at the end of January. So we had Battle Hack Melbourne. And that's a way for us to get, again, feedback and find all sorts of really cool innovation and really cool hacks.
Hi, I'm Ben Keenan. I'm the Interactive Creative Director at Clemenger BBDO Melbourne. And on Friday, our client, the TAC, the Transport Accident Commission, and PauseFest collaborated on the Pause the Road Toll Ideas Hack, where we brought a whole bunch of different people, creative people, entrepreneurial people, tech people together to solve a live road safety brief. So I guess that sort of brings out our larger interest in the team that put that together about cross collaboration and bringing people together to solve problems.
Hi everyone, my name's Sam from realestate.com.au. We've been running our own hack days for about 5 years now, and they've really evolved from when we started out. Just a couple of developers sort of mumbling, looking at the ground, talking about really super geeky stuff that even I didn't understand. Now it's evolved into the entire company taking part, everyone from the CEO down. It didn't matter what part of the business you're on, everyone sort of takes part. We also do charity hackathons where we work with non-profit sector to sort of build digital products for them. And hopefully very soon we'll have a public hack day where you can all muck around with our data, I hope.
So my name is Joshua Young. I'm probably very different to everyone else here. I'm a founder of a very early stage small startup called Org. You can visit us at auug.com. The purpose of the startup is about using motion to create music and broader human-computer interfaces beyond that. I guess I don't really sort of fit into some sort of industry background, but I guess they probably asked me to come because I've done a lot of prototyping myself, sort of hacking, putting products together, both on the hardware and the software level. And my confession is I've never been to a hackathon. So maybe I'm the contrarian viewpoint. I don't know.
Well, one question for you, Joshua, is you do collaborate with developers. And so
yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about how that collaboration works, because in some of the other cases, that collaboration might sit inside of four walls. They all work together, but in yours, it might be more organic. Could you comment in terms of how those collaborations have happened and developed?
Yeah, so I basically usually prototype the basic functionality of what I want myself. And then if I want an implementation in a particular language or platform, then I'll look for people who have already done something similar in the space, and then I will headhunt that way. So I find that's the best way to find someone who has really specific skills and experience. And usually, thus far, I've been working in those kind of relationships on a contractor basis, where they contract directly with the company. But then, for people who get really excited about the project, there's possibility for them to come on board in a more involved level and actually become part of the company.
Great, thanks. And Sam, in REA, where everybody is involved, walk us through that a little bit, where it's like, okay, how do you get literally everybody in the company involved in a hackathon?
It didn't happen overnight. It took a while. As I said, we've run 18 of these events now. I think it's important to sort of tap into the fact that you don't have to build something. It doesn't have to be shiny. It doesn't have to have drop shadows. It doesn't have to be, in production. Just find something in your organization that you could hack on to help make your life easier, make things better, more productive for the organization, or just something you want to experiment with. I mean, we had our HR team build a new sort of internal sort of how-to guide for new people who came on it at REA. They built it in WordPress, they put all the content in, and it was a fantastic tool to help new people who came on know where the good coffee shop was, know where the bad coffee shop was, know where the local services and stuff were. So again, with the success of that, it just simply, there was a flow-on effect where people said, hey, I can get into that. I could actually do something to help make my particular function at work just work better. So
yeah, cool, thanks. Does anybody have any other questions for the panel? I've got one question around just the principles of collaboration. So we've talked a little bit about how we set up groups to collaborate, different tools and that type of thing. Can you guys just offer up some of your kind of your thoughts and feelings around what you think are some of the key ingredients inside of collaboration?
So just on that point, I think one of the important things to talk about when we talk about hack events is I think the understanding that the general public would probably have is that it's all about digital tools, it's about writing code, but it doesn't have to be. And the key thing, if you're running a hack event, is just to understand all you're doing is you are putting people in a room, you're time boxing it, there's usually a competitive element, and you're removing all the distractions and allowing somebody to focus on solving some sort of problem or challenge. And while it came from the developer community and writing a lot of code, I've been to hackathons where people don't write code at all. The one that Ben ran yesterday was an example of that. So I think in terms of the tools, the most important thing you're talking about is really just having an attitude of coming in. There's probably some sort of itch you really want to scratch. There's a problem or an opportunity that you really want to solve, and sort of thing that in the back of your mind, it distracts you during your day job. Well, here's an opportunity to take 24, 48 hours, whatever it is, not think about anything else but that problem, scratch that itch, and figure out how to do it. Using digital tools, not using digital tools, it doesn't matter if you've got a good idea.
And what are some of the key things that have come out of that from you guys, different hacks over the year?
I guess in terms of what we did for the TAC, I think one of the things we sort of found in order to make this sort of effective, because we had different people in the room. We had people who were creative and people with tech, and the Braintree guys were down there. We had guys from sort of agencies, and it was great in the sense that what we found, we had to kind of come up with a really tight brief. We had to find the problem, because we had a really finite amount of time. We were going to do this in a day, and we didn't have people kind of going around the clock. We actually started and had this finite window in order to make people come up with ideas. So I think we've sort of found one of the most important things to get collaborating happening and making sure that everyone can inform was to isolate the problem, and then isolate the technology you had to use that had to kind of form part of the solution in some way. So we actually forced people to MacGyver those things together. And hopefully, in a sense, the reason we did that was just to kind of create, hopefully, just put everyone in the same level playing field, but also force some outcomes. Just leave this really sort of narrow aperture for creativity once you've been given all these, various parts to sort of stitch your idea together. And part of that came, guidance from Jason, and we sort of, referred to some of his experiences in hacks in order for us to kind of get some structure around that, and how we sort of formed teams and got people from different disciplines together in those teams in order to kind of, get a more sort of, effective spread of people kind of informing on the problem.
That's great, cool.
Sorry, I'm not being rude and just got my phone out. I got my phone out because we had an email go around for a group ideation kind of session we've got coming up next week with a set of rules, which I thought was worth reading out in the spirit of what we're talking about. You don't own me, so once any ideas on the table, it's everybody's to change a build. It doesn't stay, ownership doesn't stick with the person who had the original idea. It's unbranded, so ideas can come from anywhere. It doesn't matter what discipline or what. This is actually for a cross-agency collaborative process. Yes and, so we build on stuff, even if you think it's crap to start with, it's not yes but, it's yes and. Everything's good, so to start with we pretend all ideas are good. We then get to a filtration process partway down the line, but to start with everything's good. and quantity over quality. So to start with, it's about having lots of ideas in response to the brief, as Ben talked about, and then refining down and going, what are the best ones here, and how do we refine those? And for us, a lot of it's about that mix of people you have in the room and having a really diverse mix of people.
I was just going to add to that, to say the diverse mix, because where we work, I might go in from a tech point of view, we'll have a creative person or a couple of creative people, a strategist, and it's crazy to see how everyone thinks. And I'm getting probably to the solution quickly, and everyone else is thinking about, oh, it would be nice to go around this way. It does work well.
Sorry. I was just going to add one more thing to that. The conversations and collaboration are key, and it's so important just to get new people, and that's the real tangible benefit it has on your business, not necessarily the outcome, but people who've never met before talking. And as you alluded to, it's like, have a conversation with someone, because we had an example where I was going to build something for a hack day, and I was like, I'm going to build this thing and it's going to be great. And then one of our account managers came along and said, you're an idiot, well, it's not going to work. And we were able to pivot straight away and go off in a different direction. And by meeting these people, you work with them, you collaborate, and then next week you see them in the hallway and it's like, hey man, how you going, high five? And they know to come to you because you're a developer or a designer, and it just breaks down the walls of, especially for like us, a massive organization.
So something we see with, we see all sorts of hacks sort of come out of our Battle Hack series. So last year we had Battle Hack Sydney, and the team from that didn't know each other. So they literally turned up at the Battle Hack Sydney. We do developer matchmaking, because developers love to be matchmade. And we basically created this random team of 4, and in that there was a back-end developer, a front-end developer, also did back-end did Android. We had a designer, an architect, ad hoc designer, and a marketing IP lawyer. IP lawyer at a hackathon was like, wow, really? But yeah, they came up with this. They went on to win, but 24 hours they came up with a sports utility box that you'd have sitting in a park that you could rent sports equipment from. It's basically a portable vending machine you can use with an app. Use Braintree to rent sports equipment from. Little door opens up, take sports equipment out. It was about 11 o'clock on the Saturday night. We ran the hack over the weekend. 11 o'clock Saturday night, this tweet goes out. We've just burnt out a Raspberry Pi. Does anyone have one we can buy from them? I'm like, no way. Saturday night in Sydney, like there's no chance. They hooked up with some guy, it sounds sort of seedy, but they hooked up with some guy from eBay and bought it from his driveway in North Sydney. And they bought like a replacement unit. 2 hours later, tweet goes out again. We've just burnt that one out. I'm like, awesome. But yeah, they managed to get it working with some other equipment, and yeah, went on, and it's amazing stuff. The winners from last year's Battle Hack series, so the winners from each city we run around the world, 14 cities, go on to the World Finals in San Jose, where they have a chance at $100,000 US, free and clear. So the winners from that, Team Israel, came up with an app that you could make phone calls without using a SIM card. You pay with PayPal. It was an amazing idea. This is the type of thing we wouldn't normally think of. And like developers being put in that position of pressure, come up with something, try and beat all these other teams, then yeah, they'll come up with amazing stuff.
I think one of the messages I'd like to get across too to anybody who's made the time to come here, a lot of you have probably never been to a hackathon before. And I assume that in a lot of cases, it's probably because you think, well, I'm not a developer, I don't write code, or I don't know what I would have to contribute to something like this. And I want to stress that I run a lot of events, and I guarantee you every single time there are people that show up and it's their first time. And they're a little nervous and they're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to get out of this or what I'll be able to contribute. I wouldn't dare to tell a team what they should build. But I convince them to stay, and 100% of the time they come out of the event feeling fantastic, that it is amazing to see people who sometimes aren't so sure or confident in their abilities to be innovative or be creative, to find that when you're under pressure, when you're in a team, when it's a competitive environment, you can do amazing things and surprise yourself. And as a result, that experience of actually attending a hackathon, from a corporate point of view, I know when I was at Census and trying to get more funding to run more of these events, a key part of that strategy was getting our senior executives and people to come and attend an event, maybe to judge at it or take part or something like that, because it's the sort of thing, we'll talk about it, but we've all been to them, we all know what it's like. I highly encourage you to look up and try to find an event and just show up and give it a go for a weekend, a day, whatever it is, and just see what you contribute. Join a team. Even if you think you've got nothing to contribute, I'm sure that there's something you're going to get out of it.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I'll just add something to that point before we move to the next question. There are alternatives to getting innovation within your organization that essentially might do something similar to a hackathon, but maybe may take a different form. So, for example, if you can watch talks by a guy called Kevin Hale, who launched a company that went through Y Combinator called Wufoo. And out of his frustration with the hackathons they were doing, that the things that were being generated weren't ultimately having an impact within the company and weren't being implemented at scale, they tried an idea called King for a Day, where they would essentially give almost like a lottery, but basically everyone got their chance eventually, was that for a developer, they would essentially get the resources of the entire company at their disposal for a day. So if they had an idea that they really wanted to implement, they could implement it at a sort of company level with actually all the resources of the company. And they found, well, Kevin found that actually more effective in actually creating things that would then have an impact on, would actually be implemented and be sustained within the company.
I think my question is a good segue from what Joshua was just saying. Hi, I'm down here. Because really what's being described here are different platforms for generating ideas in different ways. And hacking, or the phenomenon of hacking, began as a political movement, as a kind of disruption, as a way of accessing something perhaps that someone didn't want you to access, as a way of finding workarounds in routines, in distribution systems that already exist. But it was also about disrupting the way that we think about social values and cultural values. So a couple of you mentioned through this process making sure that it's not just technology that's sort of, being hacked and attacked and critiqued. So I'm wondering if any of you have examples of where you've worked within your teams to really, in an open and critical environment, to unpack the values, the cultural contribution that is being made by what's being proposed.
I guess one of the practices that we do inside kind of Clevenger is we have this we have what we call a Wednesday circuit breaker session, which we've given it sort of a title just to try and make people understand it. But the idea is to try and break down kind of problems, but also kind of allow everybody in from the agency, from no matter what discipline. And I guess we just have constraints around how we actually perform these tasks. What we do is we pick one client and we pick one technology, and we have an hour. And basically what we do is we spend the first 10 minutes, because generally what happens is, like one of the difficult things with collaboration I find is, if you're a loud person in a brainstorming situation, you're going to take over. So we've tried to design something where what you do is we will sit around in a group like this, and we'll have our one technology, our one client or product, and that technology could be as specific as use the photo tagging function in Facebook in some way, shape, or form to appeal to people in their 40s who have just bought their home, and how we're going to make them consider buying Dulux paint for the exterior of their house. So we would get that sort of specific in terms of our problem. What we do is get everyone to kind of spend the first 7 minutes writing down everything they can think of. Then we go in and everyone offers one idea, and everyone else builds on that idea for an hour. And it just makes things move. That's one of the things I think it's really important with collaboration is you don't get stuck on the same idea. You just kind of keep on moving because everyone builds and everyone rotates. And that's one sort of technique I've sort of found that's effective. Again, getting really specific about the problem, because I think that stresses people. If you tell someone to be creative, they're going to get really confused. But if you hand them a stick and say be creative, they're going to use it as a drum. They're going to wave it like a flag. There's some context. So I think that's a really important thing when creating a creative process, that you put some constraints and some goals around it.
To speak to the culture part as well, and I may be stepping into a little bit of Sam because I know the REA guys do it incredibly well, but I know I've been in environments before where hackathons, this sort of hack innovation events would happen, but they'd be very developer driven because that's the culture it came out of, but it wasn't inclusive necessarily. And I think that once you get to a point where actually It's not just a group of privileged developers going off for a day and doing something and the rest of the company doesn't even know about it, but actually the entire company takes part in it. And much like the REA guys, it's a festival, it's a celebration, and from the CEO down, you get full buy-in. I think one of the keys if you're going to run something like this internally in a corporate environment is it actually has to be everybody. Because people look to the leaders in the organization, and if they say, you do this, but I'm going to keep working, I'm going to keep dealing with other things, they feel like they need to give it a half-assed effort as well, right? But if everybody puts tools down and really dedicates themselves to whatever the problem is they're trying to solve, I think that's where, when everybody's involved, you start to build a culture of innovation. And you talk about the number one reason why hackathons are valuable to a corporate enterprise, it's because you may get some great ideas out of it, some great product innovation, fantastic, but what you're building is a culture where everybody feels innovative, they feel like they contribute, like they've got an opportunity to contribute, and they feel connected to the brand and the products and the services and their team members in a way that you wouldn't have, as far as I can think, any other way.
One of the things for us on the cultural side is really trying to understand, as part of the briefing process, the audience that we're producing something for the problem, and I guess to provide some inspiration or some thought starters for the team that are going to be working, the hack team or the ideation team. So we've done, we had one last year where the person who put the brief together hacked together a 10-minute video of different bits and pieces she'd found from the internet and YouTube and TV ads and stuff she'd seen before, and hacked that all together into a 10-minute piece. And that was one of the most successful ideation processes we'd had, because as soon as people saw that, they started thinking and coming up with ideas straight away. So the brief had been done, but it was, oh, okay, you've given me something to work with on top of that. The other thing we do a bit, for example, we work with You by Kotex, brand targeted at 16 to 24-year-old females. So we, as part of the ideation process when we were pitching on them, we brought a lot of 20 to 24-year-old females, people we had working in the business, into that process. And it was interesting that although the creative director, who's, I'm guessing, close to 40-year-old male, was leading the ideation process, in reality it was one or two of the 24-year-olds who are actually driving that process and going, no, this is what's going to work and that's not what's going to work. And some of the ideas the older guys had, they were like, they're rubbish. I would not respond to that at all. And they were really driving a lot of that process. So the cultural side, a lot of it for us is about really putting yourself into the feet of the users that this is targeted at.
Yeah, I think it's about knowing your audience and making sure. And we bring the client into these ideation sessions a lot of the time to make sure, and we try and bring them in as early as possible to make sure we're going the right direction. We don't want to go spend 3 or 4 days going in the wrong direction, then come in and be like, well, that's wrong. You get them in early, and you can really hone on what they want.
All right, I think that's it in terms of time. So I just want to say a huge thank you to you guys for spending some time with us on a Sunday. Really appreciate it. And I also want to say thanks to the guys who have come and joined us today. Thank you very much.